Hi all and welcome to another week of the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams and we're going to get into the links. We've got a fairly packed show, a few rants, a few really heavy ponderings and some downloads that's come this week for more pondering. So it's going to be a rather packed show. We're going to probably go right round the world. Certainly with some of the news and the op-ed pieces, that's going to clarify a lot of the fog that is on the media and also on the alt media. So we'll see how we go with that. Right, you want to listen live? It's every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it's on Spreaker.com/user/8955881. You can also listen live to our website, thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org. We have the must-listen to shows, all the Kim shows categorised now, and a search engine which can take you to the show of whatever you're searching for. We have a lot of new members. I would advise you all we've organised all the must listen to shows in date sequence, because it is like a storybook, and you will catch up a lot of what THI is all about and what we've been putting out for 3 years now, five or six now with the my radio show appearances, but near 3 for the THI. Go and listen to them. It will make a lot more sense. We have the archives are also on thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org and also on YouTube, the Tommy Williams channel. We have the Facebook page, Truth, Honour and Integrity, and the Facebook social media alternative on MeWe.com. That's also Truth, Honour and Integrity. We have the People's Club donations website link for the foundation, where you can also go and pay for the t-shirts that are available for the People's Club, so you can go and check that out. And where are we next? The email for the show is truth.honour.and.integrity@gmail.com. Can I request that people keep their emails a bit more less depth, because I'm getting volumes of emails and some of them are rather lengthy to read, and there's only me who can read them and reply, so bear that in mind. And I'd like to thank all who contribute to my Patreon, which starts coming out tomorrow. And that's on patreon.com/TommyW/memberships. Right, announcements first, and I have two, and I want to give special thanks and highlight how global this show's really going. One of our members this week bought one of the People's Club's t-shirts and is now a proud THI t-shirt holder. Now that person is in Japan, so and I've been told that person is posting our show throughout Japan, and it really shows how global now this show's going. So thanks to Andy in Japan. Now I put this statement on Facebook and MeWe, but we have far more listeners than we do members in the respective groups. And it's kind of come to my attention that people are suggesting or believing that the People's Club is charging for proposals that are being submitted for trust funding. This is not the case for the People's Club. And furthermore, we will not be advance charging for proposals in any way, shape or form. Now, the Create Change Tank Group is currently doing so, along with some preferred vendor program before the funds arrive, but neither I, Kim, the Trust or the People's Club will be agreeing with or participating in any advance charges for proposals for funding, and nor are we receiving any of those funds for these charges. The Trust and the People's Club will not be participating in any commission deals for projects or otherwise, either in or out of the Trust or the People's Club either. THI and the People's Club will not be receiving any apps related to this pay-up front fee either. Now, we had not been consulted in any way, shape or form to participate in this, and even if I had, I would not have agreed with this. What Tank and Create Change do with their site or group should not be seen as reflective of our group or the Trust. Whilst we are all part of a wider team, there are points of interest we both disagree on, and I will be making no further comment on it or the individuals involved herein. Right, let's get into some of the news. The fake news, this time in London, has paid a heavy price. The London's Daily Telegraph has had to publicly apologise to First Lady Melania Trump on Saturday, and it has said that they've agreed to pay her substantial damages for publishing false statements regarding her family and also her modelling career. That's not the first. There's quite a number of references to the portal people, mainstream media, fake newspapers, etc. this week. And President Trump warned Saturday there could be more layoffs at media companies after BuzzFeed and the Huffington Post. You'll be surprised who owns that. Cut staff this week, saying fake news and bad journalism have led to a big turndown, and it's having a big effect. And the axe falls quickly at BuzzFeed and the Huffington Post, which was the headline in the New York Post. They won't last long either. And Trump stated that many others are expected to follow. The people want the truth, he said. And layoffs hit several news outlets this week, resulting in the loss of roughly 1,000 jobs in the media industry. BuzzFeed cut about 15% of its workforce, or more than 200 employees, and Verizon, which owns Huffington Post, Yahoo and AOL, said it would be slashing 7% of its workers in its digital media operations, or roughly 800 jobs. Not looking good for them, is it? Now, according to the portal people, the Russia investigation snared another associate of Donald Trump, which is not correct, with the arrest of the self-described political dirty trickster, their words, not mine, Roger Stone. Now, the charges brought by Special Counsel Robert Mueller reveal new details about how the Trump campaign sought to benefit from the release of hacked material which was damaging to Hillary Clinton. You don't need hacking to realise there's enough material that's damaging to Hillary Clinton. Dear me. Just as as a side note, just as that so-called investigation was coming to an end, according to the portal people, they're going to arrest someone else to go down another side street and delay it even further. That's how it works. But they don't answer the key question in the Russian probe. Did Trump campaign organise with Russia's efforts to sway the 2016 election? The answer is no. And even if it was, who cares, given the CIA has interfered in 61 elections since World War II. If it's good for one, it's good for another, isn't it? Now, some takeaways from the indictment against Stone, who was arrested last Friday. He's being accused of lying to Congress, obstructing the House Intelligence Committee's Russia investigation. Well, perhaps we should charge Mueller then, and Comey and Page and Strzok. Witness tampering, same again. And the charges stem from what prosecutors say were Stone's efforts to conceal the nature of his discussions during the 2016 election via WikiLeaks, the anti-secrecy group that released thousands of emails stolen, allegedly stolen anyway, from the Democratic National Committee and the Clinton campaign chairman and pedophile John Podesta. US intelligence agencies and Mueller's investigators have said Russia was the source of that hacked material. Yeah, right. And they've accused him of lying in his testimony in September of 2017. Really, it took them 15 months to realise that. And they say he also falsely claimed he didn't have documents requested by the committee when he did, and he's accused of corruptly persuading one of his associates, the New York radio host Randy Credico, not to testify before the House Intelligence Committee in an effort to conceal, according to them anyway, Stone's false statements. This was a story that didn't get any coverage in the media, and it's no surprise, is it? The America and the Taliban are closing in on a deal to end America's longest war after 6 days of some of the most serious Afghan peace negotiations to date wrapped up last Saturday. Did anyone hear about it? No. Talking about peace, you see. And the talks in Doha, Qatar, lasted much longer than planned and longer than any previous attempt to end the 17-year poppy field conflict. And both sides publicly reported progress, which is a rarity. Now, the chief American negotiator, Zalmay Khalilzad, that the talks are more productive than they have been in the past, and he hopes they would resume shortly. His comments suggested that the key sticking points were the terms of a Taliban ceasefire and getting the insurgents to give up on their long-standing refusal to speak to the Afghan government, which they derided as an American puppet. Go figure. Still, this is actually the first time in 9 years of intermittent peace efforts that all sides seemed serious about reaching a deal in the first phase. And this would exchange a Taliban ceasefire for a phased withdrawal of all American forces. So this is negating North Korea. This is a pulling out in Syria, and now a pulling out in Afghanistan. And yet the media won't say nothing. Is it not an achievement, regardless of the personality of who's the president, that suddenly this country is not at war in 3 places? Not according to the media. And the Taliban would also pledge not to allow international terror groups to use Afghanistan as a launching pad for attacks against the United States. Then the Afghans and the Taliban would need to detail exactly what the peace will look like in terms of the Taliban sharing power in the government, and also how that might affect an array of other issues, such as the status of women in the country. I also wonder if Pelosi was there to block that deal as well. Oh, the timing. Now, following on from Ms. Cortez, in jumps another opportunist, Senator Elizabeth Warren, who is now making a big move on taxes. Funny that, isn't it? The trust does a full revamp of the taxes, and then these two people start mouthing off about let's tax these people and let's tax those people. Not a coincidence. As she seeks to stand out in a crowded Democratic presidential primary field where many candidates will be competing to win over progressive voters. I don't think so. The senator who recently announced an exploratory committee for president is calling for a special annual tax for those with a net worth that exceeds 50 million. And the proposal quickly caught the attention of progressives who praised Warren for floating taxes as a way to tackle wealth inequality. Now, the University of California economics professors Emmanuel Sayers and Gabriel Zuckman told Warren that the tax would raise about 2.75 trillion over 10 years, and that's the kind of money where we could pay for childcare, high quality childcare for all of our kids. Yeah, like you're interested before. And Ms. Warren said it's the kind of money where we could do real relief on student loan debt. Seeing the pattern now. Oh my. But you just wonder why all of a sudden these high profile people have an interest in taxation. And the gist of it is it's a ploy to get people to do a rearranging of the decks at the IRS. And in essence, keep the same Lucian system. Not to revamp it into an American-based government-controlled agency with actual oversight. No. They want to keep the same system with the income tax, and we'll give the illusion that we're taxing the higher earners. Because you know full well they'll have loopholes that are not accessible to the average person. That's what they're doing. They're pushing where they'll give you one thing with one hand and take it away with the other. Ignore these clowns. NBC's Tom Brakow on Sunday had to apologise for saying earlier in the day that Hispanics should work harder at assimilation. During a conversation about xenophobia in the US, Brakow tweeted his apology after he was criticised by some lawmakers and activists over his comment. Republican Joaquin Castro called it ignorant, and he said the Hispanics people were offended by that. Well, personally, I don't see what's wrong with that. You know, as a foreign national, I had to work at assimilation into the American culture. So why are Hispanics or Africans or anybody else for that matter any different? I don't see what was wrong at what he said. There's a lot of people who have been here numbers of years and they don't understand the national language. That's not right. You know, if you move to a foreign country, you at least attempt to learn that language and understand that culture. You know, I didn't come to America to create mini Britain. If I wanted mini Britain, I would have stayed there. You know, the things people get offended over these days, it's beyond a joke. American authorities revealed Monday that they had filed 13 felony charges against a Chinese telecom giant and one of its top executives who has been detained in Canada. Now, it's a move that I know for a fact has raised certain tensions between Washington and Beijing, but it's a bit outside the government, as we know and have said before. But federal prosecutors in Brooklyn brought the charges against Huawei and its chief financial officer Meng Wanzhou, and they who has been in Canadian custody since last month. Now, Huawei's affiliates Skyrim and Huawei Device USA were also included in the indictment, unsealed earlier on Monday in Brooklyn. Acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker said the misconduct goes all the way to the top of the company, and Meng, who is being detained by Canadian authorities in Vancouver, is charged with bank fraud, wire fraud and related conspiracy counts. For those of you who don't know, Meng is the daughter of the Huawei founder. I'm not pronouncing that. Zheng Fei. Sorry. I tried. We will have more on Venezuela later. But the US claims of defending democracy worldwide, according to a Russian report this week, are nothing but an attempt to control and make profits from natural resources. And I agree. And as Venezuela has the largest oil reserves, they're suggesting that Trump wants those to be taken over by American companies. Now, the US has been ramping up its regime change strategy towards Venezuela, both directly and through its right-wing proxies in the country and region. And this is to coincide with the recent inauguration of Nicolas Maduro as president. And the thrust of the US strategy is to delegitimize the presidency of Mr. Maduro and secure what it calls an orderly transition to a new government. Now, Mr. Maduro won last year's presidential election with 68% of the votes, with some opposition parties taking part and others choosing to boycott the poll of their own accord. Now, international observers, including the representative from the Council of Electoral Experts from Latin America, confirmed the reliability of Venezuela's election system. Now, 5 days before the swearing in, the US State Department issued a statement attacking what it called the corrupt and authoritarian Maduro regime. And it went on to declare that the National Assembly is the only legitimate and last remaining democratically elected institution that truly represents the will of the Venezuelan people. Now, the day after the inauguration, Juan Guaido, the National Assembly's new president, refused to recognize Maduro as the new president of Venezuela. Instead, he offered himself as an interim president. I will have full details of what is really going on in Venezuela in the intel or op-ed pieces. 14 minors this week were among nearly 50 victims of human trafficking that were rescued during a sting operation across California that netted 339 arrests. Now, some of the victims found by law enforcement were as young as 13, while other cases involved children as young as 6. Now, Los Angeles County Sheriff officials said that during a news conference alongside other authorities, 93 human trafficking task forces and teams from various counties were part of the 3-day sting operation. Now, among those arrested during Operation Reclaim and Rebuild were pimps who had put victims up for sale and individuals soliciting sex from underage teens, according to the sheriff. Now, some of those saved from the underground world of sex trafficking were runaways or victims found through social media and chat sites online. So that's 339 less pedophiles and who can interfere with the children. There's a lot more of that going on, not only in America but globally. You know, some of these operations are planned for months, where they're scouting out who's who and what's what and who's connected. Ideally, when you want to get to a point where you want to collect the ringleaders rather than the minions, a bit like a drug bust. But it is going on right across the country. TikTok for those people. Public records have now revealed, and this guy should be thrown out straight away, that the Virginia Governor Ralph Northam, who endorsed infanticide as a form of abortion on Wednesday, has received almost $2 million in campaign contributions from Planned Parenthood. Now, the research reveals nearly $2 million in campaign contributions from the taxpayer-funded pro-abortion group Planned Parenthood was sent to Northam, who endorsed a bill that would allow new mothers to determine whether they wanted to keep a child after delivery, and essentially legalising infanticide. Excuse me. Now, Northrop received $1.996 million over the course of 5 years, with most of the donations coming during his 2017 election campaign. There were massive cash injections of $339,000, $278,000 and $256,000 and other similar amounts in the final days before the election. Planned Parenthood claims it's a woman's health clinic focusing on prenatal care, but an author claims it admitted last year that it is paid to do abortions. I'll wait for time. Let's do some questions. None of the questions that you've put in this week have been added this week. There's a couple from the emails. There's a load left over. Let's see how far we get. I'll do 10-15 minutes of questions, and then we'll go into a music break and some more interesting stuff. How does what we individually do affect our other selves in multi-dimensional terms? Well, everything has cause and effect. That's the gist of it. The whole gist of it is cause and effect. It creates a ripple in a pond. That ripple goes right through. What is the basic issue here now that we are facing an information deficit? We hope humanity will wake up while wringing our hands, wondering how we can help that process along. Well, waking yourself up is one thing on a knowledge base. Waking yourself up on a personal basis really helps things along. Two different types of awakening. I may do a piece for next week on that. We as a group can focus on specific issues and begin to know, use and develop our power. Could we not do that for 3 or 5 minutes during the show? Possibly. Maybe think about it. Imagine us focusing on Washington DC and flooding it with light, or doing that procedure for the factions. Possibilities are endless. We could, as a group, counteract 5G. Yes, we could. I was going to write a piece on that this week. Maybe I'll leave that till next week. Where are we next? You stated that the child's weight is to the amount of gold on the stock exchange for that day is the value of the child, and it then goes into the birth certificate fund and that incurs interest. That is correct. The weight of the child is then transferred into weight of gold, which is then monetized to the value of the gold at the time of the delivery. The birth certificate is owned and leveraged against the stock exchange. Yes, it is. Do they take out an insurance plan or policy on our life? The Rothschilds have on a lot of people. Whether we have it individually, there was talk of $1 million fund, but then if we die, their insurance plan is already guaranteed, but they just collect the fund. When we pass on and die, do they collect funds based on the age at the time we passed? They're basically taking funds from the age of 7 onwards when we don't claim that fund. Is this still happening? Yep. Will it always happen? No. I'm reading on YouTube many articles on the Florida Marquis about the many ships in the Caribbean which are from Russia, China and now Iran. All of this is in relation to negative US history with Venezuela, none of which Trump has helped to alleviate, even though he's not the originator. And Russia and China military equipment are also along the Canadian-US border and the Mexican border. That is not correct. That's pure BS. That the Russians and the Chinese are on the two borders. You know, I heard that about a decade ago. Do you not think with all the military equipment and spying that within a decade they wouldn't have found those people and done something about it? You know, it's repeat news that they keep throwing up to create fear. So there's no Russian and Chinese military equipment and all kinds of trained soldiers on both borders. Rubbish. Also mentions the uninhabited city in China is for the global elite and their extended families in a not too distant future. Not as I understand it. Trump's grandchildren are also learning Mandarin language. Do you have any info about that? Not really. Fine, people learn different languages. As a sovereign nation, America, since the United States of America is corporation, can we defend ourselves but not be aggressive? Once we become that sovereign nation, we can only defend, we cannot attack. And since the US military is presently owned by others, which is correct, it's not the American military, do you know how this will work with our military aggression? Well, once we declare sovereignty, it means the current US military has to become an American military ran by America, not Rothschilds or other goons. Otherwise they get cast out. It's that simple. That's what sovereignty is all about. So we wouldn't be allowing mercenary based armies, which is what the US military currently is, as part of our sovereign nation. Those generals have to make a big choice sooner rather than later. You either go with the Rothschilds and get thrown out of the country, or you join the American people who are actually paying you to be in jobs. Here we go. A couple of more. I'm new here. There's 2 questions on this. My awakening started Cobra's blogs, then the Blue Chicken guys. Oh dear. Then Jim over at Ground Crew Command, and I listened to your interview with Jim and joined here straight away. My question is related to mass meditations. I want to help, and up until now I've been doing many of the mass meditations that Cobra and Jim have organised. Cobras are 15 minutes long and involve setting an intention, which he sets. The issue here is our lack of knowledge. Not take away the individuals who are doing the meditations. It's our lack of knowledge of mandalas, setting intentions, worshipping gods and goddesses. And we think that is all love and light, and that's going to save us. What if you can pick any name you like, say Jesus, but what if they set the intention that Jesus is rogue? and you don't know. This is the problem with the 99.99999% of humanity. We don't know the inner workings of how things work. We don't even understand ourselves, never mind a lot of the physical and non-physical realms. What the mandalas, just because it comes from Tibet doesn't mean it's all good and light. They have ways of seeding and coding that none of us really understand. So whilst the person might be doing things for good with the mass meditations, if they're throwing stuff in that they really have no idea about, it just ruins the whole lot. And then you're expending a lot of energy collectively that's going to negative intent. You may think it's doing positive intent, but the danger is we just are not knowledgeable in that field enough. We're just not. And that is my main concern with it. Those mandalas are seeded and encoded with all kinds of ritual stuff that we don't know. We're learning about it, but we don't know. We don't know 100% what's good and what's not. And then playing to ISIS and really Horus and all kinds of other gods and goddesses. Where were they when all this tragedy has been going on for 78,000 years? Nowhere. Did they help us? No. Were they ever going to help us? No. Look at the thing above Jesus. IHS. Isis, Horus, and Set. As in Satan, as in Satan. As in Saturn Matrix. Oops. We have no idea who we're giving our energy away to. And that's why I'm reluctant to support any mass meditation, no matter who's doing it. We just don't have sufficient knowledge to support it. Fine if you get a lot of people all in the one group, like Jim does, and you put your own words and intent in, as long as you're not using mandalas or goddess this and god that. You've just eliminated your own intent, your own words. Then you can trust. But the minute you insert someone you think is above you, which is rubbish, God, Jesus, Isis, Horus, you've lost the intention of what that meditation can do. Hope that helps. So it's not necessarily per se against Cobra or even the blue chickens. We do not have sufficient knowledge to be doing that. We just don't. What causes a person's body to sleepwalk or sleep talk? I've had someone describe their episodes to me via a family member's account of the sleepwalker responding to said family member in a confrontational and aggressive manner. Walking. It can be two things. Walking is the first thing that springs to mind. Because if that's not the waking person's normal behaviour, then it's somebody else's that they've brought back via the dream time. There is also cases where momentarily you get trapped between the two planes, be it the physical and the astral. So you get trapped in the etheric, which I would suggest is what is the cause of the sleepwalking, where you're part awake but you're also not. So in other words, something has trapped that person in between the two planes, which is not good. You know, there's people who have done that and end up killing themselves. So this is some of the things that take place during your so-called dream time. Again, we're learning this stuff more so in the last decade than any other time. Oh, it's just a dream. Oh yeah, our Johnny goes sleepwalking. It's no problem, but it is. And this is where our lack of knowledge and naivety of this type of field can get us into a lot of trouble. Do you think the Q being of Star Trek, not QAnon, is a depiction as detailed in the Book of Enlightenment? Not exactly, no. I recently met a young woman who is still on the astral plane. On 2 occasions I had a warning in dream time for something that happened a few days later. At a later date I started crying and I didn't know why at that moment. Minutes later she called that she'd been beaten into hospital. Does that mean we have a connection of sorts, and if so, what kind? You have some sort of connection, yes. Whether it doesn't necessarily mean a love connection either. It may be an old friend from a previous lifetime. The soul mate connection is heavily overplayed in the alt media, courtesy of the New Age crew. But a lot of us do have codes whereby you can pick up the feelings and the senses of another person, even though you don't even live together. So yes, you do have a connection, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a love connection. It could be a friendship or old friendship connection. Thomas, could you do a small information piece about the current state of Canada? Yes, it's effed. Sorry, I may add a bit more in next week. It's given the volume of population up there, there's an awful lot of skullduggery going on in Canada. I agree with Thomas when he said on a recent speaker show, it gets in the way and it's not needed to regain our memories of past lives and could be even more traumatic. I'm concerned though, after we die in this life, will the electromagnetic memory wiping interdimensional hardware up there still be wiping our memories? No, it's all gone in 2013. This person's asked several questions, and I don't know whether you saw my Facebook question or pointer. You really need to go and listen to, in sequence, to all the must listen to shows. It covers all of these questions you're asking, and it will give you a better understanding. Will healing modalities be presented earlier to those with issues and who desire to help once funding has started, but who may be somewhat lacking in physical abilities? I don't know how it's going to be rolled out, if or when. You know, the energies that are coming in, the source energies since last May, are to help you help yourself heal. You know, whilst it'd be cool to have some technology and machines that can fix things maybe a bit quicker. But there needs to be an education alongside that, or a teaching program, not education, of how we can fix things ourselves. We always rely on the technology, whether, technology is not all about electrical. Agriculture was technology, called new technology once. It didn't actually work out too well for us, given they genetically altered a lot of the things that we were growing, including wheat, which was the biggest damager of humans. GMO is not a new technology or a new idea. No, it's thousands of years old. But yes, it will be nice if some of the people promoting these machines on the internet are real and do work. But it remains to be seen. How can people access the Akashic records or galactic downloads for hidden ancient history? Do the halls of records exist under the Egyptian and Boyne Sphinx? It's Besegi, and also the Sphinx in Egypt. You have to have a certain frequency. You have to have developed, soul developed in here on the mental planes to be able to interact with those fields. That's the key, is to get everyone here off the astral level and onto the mental planes, of which there are 4. Then your so-called junk DNA, 95%, which is not junk at all, that's your hidden abilities, your hidden technology, your hidden magic, if you want to call it that. But it's not a suddenly not many people can read in there, because we don't have enough with the correct frequency or soul development. Maybe that's enough. If the trust holds relics of our past or history, has Kim decided the fate of these items? There's a number of documents that will be of much interest to some people in the public. We have far more pressing things to be dealing with currently than revealing past history. We have to deal in the now. If it's exposing certain things that then leads to a change of contract or a change of government, then those documents will be used, but not for the just knowledge base. We have far more important things that we're dealing with currently. It's getting a bit hairy out there. That's all I'll say. Right, apologies to the ones I didn't ask, which is virtually all the ones that have been put in this week. But there's just so much to cover of what's really going on now. Not the bullshit that we're being fed. Where am I? This next song, we're going to have a music break, and then we're going into the intel. But this next song is not one I would normally play, because it's near 10 minutes long, and it's not a common song unless you're into heavy rock, but it triggered me into something rather heavy thinking wise, and also into download mode this week. And the gist of it is, humanity has for far too long dabbled in the past we did have time travel prior. And by going back to try to change the past and subsequently try to alter the future, this was our biggest mistake. We have to observe the past from a place of neutral, not active or reactive, assess it and develop hindsight and bring it into the now and correct it from here and now to create the different future, not the past. Now the lyrics from the song will give you all the deeper meaning behind that, and you'll get a grasp of it. This is Black Sabbath and Megalomania. Right, let's get into some intel where we make some sense out of the nonsense that's absolutely everywhere at the moment. Now Trump said something this week, if we don't get a fair deal from Congress, the government will either shut down on February the 15th again, or I will use the powers afforded to me under the laws and Constitution of the United States to address this emergency. Now what I'm going to say is that does not necessarily mean mass arrests, etc. will happen that have been promoted on YouTube and all kinds of other blogs. And I've said for a reason you will not make sense of public statements here on in. Back in December. Perhaps you're now starting to see why. Now the State of the Union, which was supposed to take place 2 days ago at the behest of Nancy Pelosi, whilst they tried a 9/11 style murder plot to eliminate Mr. Trump and the Vice President Mr. Pence, to allow Pelosi, who would have been out of the country, to take over the government. Now they have pushed the State of the Union back, and Pelosi has offered Trump for it to take place on the 5th, I think. This is to give Pelosi and the deep state crew more time to oust the president. That's what they're playing at. Next intel. The Fed and Mnuchin, deep state puppet, tried a plot this week to steal funds that were sent by the Man of World Holding Trust to Mr. Trump. Now, Mr. Kim sent Mr. Trump $2 billion this week to keep the government going in moderate form, and part of those funds are also to pay back pay to all those staff who were laid off. And this was at Trump's request. The Fed and Mnuchin tried to steal that money, or tried to take credit for the Rothschilds for it. Another common theme. But it didn't end there. The same combination. Mnuchin and the Fed were asking for Trump to ask Man of World Holding Trust for $1.3 trillion for a whole budget, not a part budget, to which Mnuchin would then get all the credit for, and also state it came from the Rothschilds, which is never going to happen. But here's the kicker. They asked for the whole budget to be transferred not to the Treasury, directly to the Fed, and then passed on. Then it would be passed on to the US Treasury. Now, money from the Man of World Holding Trust, or money for the government, goes directly to the Treasury, not to the bankrupt, defunct Federal Reserve, who are operating without a license. And this is their levels of desperation now. They think, or they actually think, we're that stupid to send them anything, never mind 1.3 trillion. I'm sorry, Mr. Mnuchin and the Federal Reserve goons, we ain't that stupid, as you have found out. And that's not happening. Now the irony is the 1.3 trillion Mnuchin asked for is the exact same figure, there or thereabouts, the acting, not the current, acting Venezuelan president requested the return of their alleged funds that are held by the US. Funny that, isn't it? We will not be sending a full budget for America until certain conditions and things are fixed satisfactorily. And we will continue to top up and pay staff, which is essentially what the funds Manor World Holding Trust is sending to keep the government barely operational. There won't be any full budget done until things are really fixed. And that's also at the request of Mr. Trump as well, I might add. Next item. Mr. Trump is receiving and sometimes acting on some very bad intel from the deep state goons, the Black Dragon groups, of which Pelosi is the head of, North America, and he needs to be more savvy with what he's taken on board and who is around him. Next item. The clowns, Rothschilds et al., have tried to raid Venezuela, Zambia and also Zimbabwe this week to leverage all of their in-ground resources via the Hong Kong Exchange. That failed. So Pelosi has then told them to attack Egypt next. Message to Egypt: throw these goons out of your country. And this is what they're doing now. Because they've no longer got any funds for anything to do anything, which is what we've been saying over a long period of time, they're raiding countries and trying to leverage anything they can get their hands on. They can't play the supernote games anymore, where they print a load of BS currencies with the same allocation numbers that are already in existence. In other words, a copy of a Federal Reserve note. It's a bit like printing your own monopoly money. They printed something like 180 billion of that out. It's all, most, if not all, is now being recovered, and the quantum system recognises duplicate numbers and deletes them. So now, this is what's going on in Venezuela. It's going on in several African countries, Ukraine, you name it. Where there's issues going on around the world now, it's them goons trying to rape their countries again. Next news item. Wells the Fargo, as in what the, has approached Kim this week, stating they are willing to work with her. This usually means Kim listens to their bullshit plans and lack of micro and macro financial knowledge. You'll be amazed at how little they know about their own business. And then Kim turns around and says, that's not happening. So we'll see how that unfolds. But yet again, it's another sign of their desperation. They're hanging by a thread. Oh my. The next piece is included in the intel because it's got chunks of intel, but it's also got a backstory of what's really going on in Venezuela. So the stories of Venezuela issues are now reaching all the YouTubers and whatnot, and there's varying degrees of narrative put forth, little of which resembles the truth. And mentioning of the US have their funds and the Bank of England has their gold, when the reality is it was the Vatican itself that looted all of Venezuela's wealth. Oops. Now Maduro, who is the current president, I might add, not Guaido, who's acting self-installed president, and it's a case of who is who and what is what. Now, Maduro, whilst not great, is not responsible for all the ills of Venezuela. It was all staged that way. This is what they do. They come in with Chinese investment and then bump the loan prices up, bump the interest rates up, and then a country kind of collapses, and then they take more assets away to pay for the debts. And it's all done over a period of time. It's been done in Ireland, it's been done in Greece, it's been done in Cyprus, and it's currently being done in America. That's the way they work. Now, Guaido is a US deep state puppet. And if the people of Venezuela or the people in the alt media think things in Venezuela are bad now and will improve with Guaido, you will be badly mistaken. Badly mistaken. So here is the background of what really happened in Venezuela. Back in 2012-13, the Dragons agency people formed a background group to the Five Eyes group. And for those of you who don't know what the Five Eyes group, it's actually 9. It's a group of intelligence agencies around the world, where CIA is one, KGB is another, and yes, they work together and have done since the 1940s. Oops. More Russian nonsense. Mossad, Pine Gap, and other countries, GCHQ. And the reason they form that is Pine Gap can go and spy on Americans and then pass the information to the CIA. The CIA, under law, can't spy on Americans. That's how it works. So these groups set up a background group involving several countries, including America and Russia, and this group is known as the Glue. And they teamed up to overthrow Mr. Chavez of Venezuela, except Mr. Chavez was a hugely popular leader in Venezuela at the time, back in 2012-2013. Now the gist of it is, Chavez and Bush both hated each other with a passion. And because the latter wanted a piece of the oil and the in-ground resources in Venezuela, and Chavez refused and then nationalised the whole industry, things got dodgy for Venezuela, and the clowns came in and started attacking it. Back then, Mr. Chavez was selling gas to his people for 9 cents a gallon. 9 cents, which made other countries rage at their prices that they were selling it at, and it made them look like pirates, which is exactly what they are. Now, Chavez also gave cheap or free oil to low-income people in America who were struggling. Again, mainstream media won't let you know that. They also did some sales to China, and an $8 billion deal was done, but subsequently that $8 billion went missing. That's another one where they collect funds to keep themselves going once the trust funds is no longer available to them. And this is what they're doing in each country. Oh, we'll make a deal, you send the money, and we keep it, and then we don't give you what you thought you were going to get. So, as Mr. Chavez was not bending to the global clowns, they gave him an accelerated version of cancer to take him out, and he died within 10 days. This is what they do. And in came Maduro, and more particularly the generals and the military out of Venezuela, who arranged a contract with the Chinese elders whereby they would all get paid trillions of dollars for Venezuela oil. This was back in 2013. So with Chavez out of the way, they thought they would all get rich, just like all the others have been promised the massive riches, and you all know what happens next. Yes, they never got paid. And the generals and the military in Venezuela who have waited for 6 years. And now the clowns are telling them it's all because of Maduro. That's why they're trying to overthrow him and install the US Inc. clown's puppet. Again, this is a familiar tactic of blame this and that one for the delays on promises, except it never materialises regardless of who or what is in charge. One day all generals will not only see through the illusion, but their own stupidity. So over the last 6 months, the generals have been getting rather pissy, I hear, because of their lack of payouts, and they are broke. Again, does that not sound familiar? And have now started to threaten the Rothschilds' Chinese elders. Message to the generals: threats won't work, only actions against them will. Now, Maduro this week has been told that Mr. Trump is out to kill him via the Colombian government and the mafia. This is total BS. John Bolton had blocked any contact between Mr. Trump and Maduro, and so that did not take place. But Trump needs to not listen to the clowns around him also. They are setting him up big time. Also in 2013, the Rothschilds' own printing company, De La Rue, overprinted vast quantities of Venezuelan bolivars, pallets and pallets of them, and some of them are stored in Hungary and various other countries. And yes, the clowns have started selling the overprinted, valueless currencies known as bolivars to the gullible on the internet. You all know what happens next. Coming soon, the RV based on bolivars. Don't fall for it. It's not going to happen. So here's the recent history for those thinking of buying those rogue notes. The main currency of Venezuela since August 20th, 2018 has been the Bolivar Soberano. Now, since August the 20th last year, they replaced it with the Bolivar Fuerte. All sleight of hand. So when you go to cash in, those Fuerte won't be real. Or if they transfer it to the other way, the original Bolivar Soberano will have zero value. A bit like the Iraqi dinars and the Zims. Beggars belief. Now, the primary reason for a replacement at a rate of one of the Bolivia Soberanos to 100,000 of the Bolivar Fuertes, they're saying was hyperinflation. But who created the hyperinflation? The Rothschilds, who will rarely get paid out on the selling of those notes. The Rothschilds again, who won't get paid out on those notes as promised. The generals, the military and the people who buy them. Same plan repeated over and over again, and yet so many people fall for it time and time again. The lure of bits of paper with numbers on appears to make all involved lose all of their common sense and apparently any rational thinking. You have to change that. Now, the message to the generals and the military of not only Venezuela but every country, including the clans in this country, who have been made promises of riches: it's time you all got together and went directly after the people who have made you blatant false promises. 10, 15, 25 years waiting for an RV? Really? You will never ever be paid out, no matter how many full moons, rituals, eclipses or sacrifices. You've all been duped and played for fools. And it's time you all start to work together for your people and not these genocidal maniacs. All of you. You're going to get hung. Because they'll take you out the same as they've taken everyone else out. General Mattis, next intel item, who was fired, is now working in the system for the clowns at Central Command in Florida against President Trump. This show warned of that many, many months ago when another popular blogger was saying, watch him go. Yeah, we watched him go all right. Next intel item, and for the listeners in Africa, particularly Angola, need to listen closely. The Rothschilds have stolen hundreds of thousands, of dollars worth of diamonds out of Angola. Now, these diamonds are currently being held in Dubai, and they can't sell them onto the big diamond companies like the Bears, etc. And so they are trying to use the diamonds, or get rid of the diamonds and sell them via certificates to fund and take over Venezuela. See how it all ties in? And to do that, they are using what is known in the diamond industry as Kimberley certificates. And no, these are nothing to do with our Kim, but are named after mines in Kimberley, South Africa. Now, the Kimberley certificates are used to transfer diamonds, and they can't use them as Angola certificates in case the generals in Angola work out what they're up to. To the Angolan generals, now you know, you've all been duped as well. You're not getting a payout, and they've stolen all your diamonds. Oops. Next intel item. Generals in South America, Africa, and even Russian oligarchs are now hating every so-called Chinese-linked so-called investment groups right now. They've all worked out this was another plot and also another delaying tactic. For an example, if we just take over this or that country or this or that resource, then we will all get our payouts. That's how they play. Except, nope, it's not happening. Like, ever. They'll come up with another country that needs to be messed with, or another scenario to engineer to delay and delay and delay and delay until you all crack your heads together and come up with a single brain cell and work it out. But these Chinese investment groups, mainly operated by the Dragon Group, the Black Dragon and the Gold Dragons, have scrambled all over the world using up their excess supply of US dollars, not for investments, but to wreck that country, its finances and also its economy. Well, it appears that all of these groups now are real tired of waiting for something to take place. But what I'm suggesting to those people is please target the real culprits and not use the countries and their people to suffer any further. So don't be going attacking countries. Attack the people who have been doing this. The goons in the black, gold, green and blue dragons. The Pelosi's, the Mnuchins, the Rothschilds. These so-called fake Chinese elders, if you can ever find any. And the message to those generals, again, it's time to gather in your masses and launch a witch hunt on those who are ruining everything, including you. Do something of real honour for the first time in your working life. Deal with the clowns before they deal with you, and they will. Just because you've got badges on your shoulder doesn't mean they won't take you out. Next intel item. Zimbabwe, still under a state of emergency. People are being killed and tortured in that country, badly. Thousands dead. And for what, you may ask? The fucking RV. You know, how long is this going to go on? Zimbabwe has refused point blank, like Venezuela and Chavez did, that they will ever revalue their ZIMS currency. It's not happening. Kim's spoken to the president of Zimbabwe several times. I've heard him on the call. They're not revaluing the current ZIMS currency ever. In fact, they are going to change their currency to another currency altogether, which leaves all the ZIMS valueless. Oops. People globally are dying, being tortured, suffering, all courtesy of the Rothschilds, Chinese elders, militaries, agencies, and the plethora of paid agents, or just plain stupid people in the alt media, all pushing the RV. You people in the alt media have had more than long enough to learn the truth of your own stupidity. The RV, like I keep saying, and have done for near 7 years now, will never ever take place. It was never possible to take place to begin with. We'll just collect this currency, we'll just get this, and we'll just get that tomorrow. And you've got thousands following it, maybe more. Each and every one of you who are supporting the RV are all participants in global genocide. Yeah, you heard that right. You still want to wait and promote the RV? Fine. But all of you have blood on your hands and are propagating genocide. And at the same time, delaying the real funds being released that is designed not to make you all millionaires, billionaires or trillionaires, but actually to save humanity. Personally, I hope you all go to the lower astral tonight, as you certainly don't deserve to sleep peacefully. Just a bunch of greedy, self-serving bastards, lawyer. I'm sorry. People being tortured because they want to cash in their fucking dinars. Dear me. Final intel. The invasion of Panama. Another RV-based fun and games. Colombia and Venezuela, along with a stop-off to Haiti, none of which was approved by Congress. Neither was it approved by the Commander-in-Chief, Mr. Trump, in case those clowns forget who that is. Neither were consulted, either. And that has to tell all Americans in this country that this country is not being ran by the government in any way, shape or form. 4 countries invaded, and the President didn't approve, or the Congress. The country is being run by foreign-based bankers, mercenaries and dragon groups, along with the treasonous mainstream media. Not only in this country, but most other countries too. So all who are blaming Trump, now you know the real truth. Are you still going to blame Trump, or are you going to get off your backside and protect this country? Regardless of which stupid party you've followed like sheep, there are snakes in both of them. Remember that. We're going to have a musical break, and yeah, let's go with this. We'll be back with some op-ed pieces. Hi all and welcome back. Let's get into some op-ed pieces which will in part cover some of the intel we just covered. Now, I'll just briefly flick through the MeWe chat, and it's the same thing. Everyone's asking the same thing. Why no arrests? Why are the clowns still walking around? And these are valid questions to ask, and quite frankly a source of frustration amongst us all, and in particular the people connected with Q, who seem to be losing a bit of faith in the trust the plan. The problem is they don't know the plan. Neither should they at this point. This is war after all, and not for internet people in general to know intimate details or plans. The key for the people on the internet is to unlearn the lies and support the people taking these clowns on. So why no arrests? Well, it's fairly simple for those in THI, as you all know the depth of the system of control, and it kind of goes way beyond government, and I mean way beyond. We have a cancer in this country in all kinds of hidden realms, hidden people, hidden groups, hidden mercenaries, etc. The deep state, as it's known, has punctuated into every government department, every agency, hierarchy of the military, and also the Pentagon. The Nazi element that was run from 1947 onwards, although there is evidence of their involvement here long before Project Paperclip. They have placed people in all the top positions in every single department, including local government. And then you add in the AIPAC Zionist crew also. These all have to be cleared out before any real justice, arrests, or any people-based policies can be implemented, like sovereignty. They'll just block it. You've seen how they operate. Can't even get a budget based on American people's security. No, they're not interested in that. They want to carry on child trafficking and adrenochrome and all kinds of other torturous things done to children via the southern border. Say person X has committed a crime, or several. Who investigates them? The CIA, FBI, military-led tribunals? How can we, when all three of them are riddled with anti-American agents? Look at how they've handled the fake Russian collusion investigation. It's not an investigation at all. It's just a delaying tactic and a witch hunt to find the most tenuous links to Russia they can find and hope it sticks, ignoring that the CIA and the KGB have been working together under Five Eyes for the last 70 years. Also ignoring the elephant in the room, like Obama, Hillary, Comey and Mnuchin selling American resources off to Russia. Go figure. And uranium in particular, which was to be funneled into Iran. Yes, the same Iran, you know, the one that tell us that country's all so evil and is a terrorist state. The Russians, they're evil and are coming to get us. And those four and others sold them fusionable weapon materials. Hello, McFly. Then Person X goes into a court. Do you really think that trial will be done fair and justice will prevail as it stands? And the whole justice system was riddled with the same anti-justice clowns. All paid agents of the deep state, and let's keep the status quo of one rule for the people and one rule for them. And that rule is they are immune from prosecution, no matter what crimes they commit, under their constitution, not our constitution. That's what we're operating under, their constitution, not ours. This is the reality. Some will say, well, Trump could get a team around him. But would he or you know who you can trust? With 5 factions, different coloured dragon groups, APAC, all chiming in the ear, the bankers, the Rothschilds, you name it. In a theatre riddled by corruption, backstabbers, double agents, triple agents, the threatened or the frightened individuals, or people going along with the old system because they're terrified their own criminality will all get exposed, or they're just worried about their own paychecks. So this is a sample of the field of operation that Trump is currently working within, and that's just one aspect of it. So when you ask where are the arrests, perhaps that gives you a better understanding of what we're actually dealing with here. It's staggering, not only in this country but globally. Trump this week turned round and said, I never thought I'd say this, but I think John Roberts Fox and Gillian Turner at Fox News have even less understanding of the war negotiations than the folks at the fake news at CNN and NBC. In stepped the journalists, so-called journalists anyway. This is not right, Mr. Trump. I stand by my colleagues John Roberts and Gillian Turner. They don't deserve this. No reporter does. Really. And according to this particular spokesperson, they are just doing their jobs and reporting the facts. Comedy act as well. Reporting the facts. Oh my. He went on, they are not opinion journalists and deserve the respect from the White House they cover. Bullying journalists is not a presidential act, they cried. Oh my. 1, they're not journalists, period. Real journalists investigate all stories, not become a one-sided agency script reader. 2, if you're going to talk shite all day about a certain person, eventually that person will respond back. And if you don't like it, perhaps you need to change the script. This is a classic case of flip-flopping. The real bullies blame the other to deflect their own behaviours. You've seen it many times in the mainstream media. And it just goes on. But Trump's in trouble. And I hope the people around him pass this on. I'm sure they will. So Trump ended the government shutdown and the media rhetoric ramped up further. Trump sold out, Trump's this, Trump's that. Oblivious to the real issues at hand, but fully aware of their role in distorting the truth and allowing criminals to reign free and roam amongst us, allowing known criminals to continue to run this country into the ground, and allowing anti-American mouthpieces to proliferate their dirge and diatribe with no cross-questioning whatsoever, or even asking them to prove the complete bullshittery that they're spitting out of their mouths. Just goes unhindered. But Trump can't do right from wrong. He goes to a funeral. He got criticised. He doesn't go to a funeral. He got criticised. And the same applies to official meetings. If he goes, he gets criticised. If he doesn't, he also gets criticised. Doesn't apply to a Pelosi, does it? Didn't apply to Anne or Obama. But why hasn't the media reported some really juicy scoops on their airwaves? Heaven knows they really need to do something to keep on air. Their numbers are plummeting faster than Stormy Daniels' knickers have. Let's be honest. How about the biggest story in the past 8 months? Like the SSP, Secret Space Program, firing a missile from American soil at Air Force One. Did they report that? No. Crickets. Or how about Pelosi and Schumer planning a 9/11 on the Capitol building from Puerto Rico in a plot to make the old bag the president? Nope. Again, crickets. Or how about the $105 billion injection of funds into a bankrupt country to fix all the people's homes and infrastructure in Florida, Georgia, Alabama, North and South Carolina and California, which was blocked by Hillary, Mnuchin and Citadel. Also, Vice Security, German Vice, WEISS, mercenary group inside the Treasury. Did they report that? No. Crickets again. Or why a certain general wanted and tried personally to take out Trump recently. Oops. Or ask why the NYPD, which is run by Citadel, I might add, won't testify or release the child face skinning video done by Hillary and her lesbian partner, Huma Abedin. Or ask why Pelosi's security is so vital for her and her entourage for a trip, but not the American people. Or ask why 900,000 children in America go permanently missing each year. Or why do they ask for Trump's tax records and ignore Obama has no records whatsoever? Or ignore the fact that he's not even an American citizen? Why haven't they covered the bills HR 24, HR 25 and HR 204? Simple. These portal people acting as fake journalists all took the blood money to spout lies, distortions, complete delusion, confusion and agency or deep state scripted propaganda. That is all so far from reality, it's not even funny anymore. But a warning to Mr. Trump, you need to start spitting out in public or on tweets the above facts just laid out. If you don't, these treasonous turds will swamp you. Stand up and speak out. Enough of us have your back. Defensive tweets are fine. We need attacking tweets now, or attacking speeches. You are losing the media war, no matter how fake they are. Call all the above out, please. I said back in 2013, we have two problems in this country, the military and the media. We the people can do more against these clowns. Just shut them down. They are the main reason so many in this country talk out of their ass. They have been educated, not taught. Riddled with drama-laden BS, while so many in the country and others suffer. And I keep asking it, but it's way past time the whole of the alt media got under these people's skins. The portal people. Get under their skin and make them feel as uncomfortable as we do when we hear them. Every time they open their shite-filled pie holes. I don't care if one or two on CNN, or more in particular, one or two work for Fox, are okay. If they had any real gumption, they would walk away from them and call them out. It's taken blood money. Every news media presenter are a blight on humanity and beyond reproach, in my opinion. Occasionally they put people on their shows, you've all seen them, some people who talk common sense. Then the blonde clones that are on every single channel jump in and shut them down. Or just talk over them so they can't speak. Is that journalism? Or open debate? No. It's utter vacuous cretins with zero minds of their own who rely on B-movie script writers to portray their opinions, because they have none. We the people are not interested in their opinions, as their viewing figures now show. It's time to end their opinions once and for all, and add in the clowns on the catastrophic fear and doom channel also, known as the weather channel, as in we don't know whether or whether you're all going to die today or tomorrow channel. Shut them down. Next item. Hurricane Michael cast a path through Southeast America 3 months ago next week. And in response to Emily Mahoney of Miami Herald and the Tampa Bay Times, Catherine Vaughn, who wrote an article in respected newspapers this week asking why there is little to no response via FEMA, or questioning why there was low donations sent in for the disaster relief. To those people, I'll tell you why. Let's see if you can write the real truth, because here it is. FEMA has no money. They're waiting for the Rothschilds. The government has no money. They're being told to wait for the Rothschilds. Only Kim and the Man of World Holding Trust is keeping it open. FEMA has no intentions of spending money on those areas, even if they had the money. It's not part of the plan. The government has agreed a $105 billion disaster relief fund from the Man of World Holding Trust to put back together again all those affected states. The funds were available to go in November after due diligence was done on the provider of the funds, Man of World Holding Trust, which was approved by Homeland Security, the US Treasury, the American government, and also the respective government departments. Mr. Trump signed off on it and made arrangements with the US Treasury to facilitate the use of government cards, to which then the Man of World Holding Trust and Kim would load those cards to the tune of $105 billion, and the repairs were about to go. We who are working with the trust, and myself included, took part in, spent many hours over a few weeks preparing to launch the disaster relief. We had temporary housing arranged, thousands of generators arranged, trucks of all kinds and all kinds of other equipment all prepared to launch. And what happened next should not only alarm Emily Mahoney of the Miami Herald and the Tampa Bay Times correspondent Catherine Vaughn, but every single American. The ambassador for the Manor World Holding Trust went into the Treasury to collect the cards for loading the funds. As he was receiving the cards, the so-called security agents representing Citadel, New York, and its subsidiary of Vice Security, who are a spin-off of Citadel, approached the ambassador and proceeded to escort him out of the building. The Treasury people tried to stop it and stated he has theirs and the President's authority to be in the building, and the security guards essentially told them they don't care about their authority or what Mr. Trump says, and removed him from the building. Hence, we still have no repairs underway. Like I've said earlier, this was all ordered by Hillary Clinton and Stephen Mnuchin. Neither of those are helping America, and both are working on behalf of the Rothschilds family and what is known as the deep state. These groups are holding this country to ransom, and have been doing for numbers of years. And unless you people operating as journalists start to write the real truth, millions of Americans are going to continue to suffer like those who have in Hurricane Michael and other storms. Like the people in Louisiana after Katrina, which is now 13 years ago, and about 5% have gone back. 5%, even if it's double and 10. Why isn't it 100%? Because they didn't want them back, and they don't want them back in certain areas of Florida, or certain areas of Georgia, or certain areas of North and South Carolina either. Like they don't want certain people in certain regions of California. So, Emily Mahoney and Catherine Vaughn, do you want to continue to write BS all of your lives, or do you want a scoop for you and your paper? If you want the scoop, write to me at truth.honour.and.integrity@gmail.com for further details. Should you have the gumption and the real honour to fight for your people in this country. Next item, in the light of Brexit, which in my opinion, and I said it at the time, was Baron Rothschild's exit, BR. Not British exit, Baron Rothschild's exit, where the Rothschilds were transferring all power and wealth to the East and forcing the West into bankruptcy. That's how it was going to work. That's what they thought. Think about it. Since when have the establishment really allowed the public any real say in politics? Oh, but we have a general election, Thomas. It's fixed. They choose. And even if we have a general election and the votes are counted correctly, are they your choices? Are they your choices? No, they're the choices that they put forward for you to vote on. So we never really have a real say in politics, like never. So the fact that they allowed this vote to go ahead means it was done with a hidden intention, does it not? Comes more clearer. I warned of that on the night of that particular election. So of course things haven't gone too well for Baron Rothschilds and the transfer to the East, courtesy of the Trust and others, which is why he tried to get back in control of the UK just over 12 months ago. Hence the delay or a new vote, which will overturn the first vote. You can guarantee that. They'll make sure of that. And the BR exit, Brexit, becomes BR entrance again. And that slimy snake of a family who always hedges all bets so they win, which is why they are backing all the 5 factions, Maybe the 5 factions can pair together with their single brain cells and come up with one head of common sense between them and realise this clown family is playing you all. It's played Britain for fools, it's played America for fools, and every other country. They have fake titles, king this and pindar that, false promises and fake portrayals of riches that will never materialise. They never do. And perhaps they should eliminate those harvesting and raping clowns out of society once and for all. Next item. This is a bit of a repeat from OYM, but not everyone was aware that we were on OYM, or I was anyway, on Sunday. And I've added a bit more to it. But there was a guy who's very knowledgeable. I don't want to, no intentions of running their guest down. He put his information across rather well. But there's a problem when you are blaming X and Y for the ills when it's really A and B. It negates all the compiling of data that you've got when you're going after the wrong one. And they do this often, sleight of hand. And during the show, he mentioned that about the Pope. But the Pope has never had the right to declare anyone sovereign, ever. The Pope is a sub-sovereign to the master sovereign of the trust, which was Marduk, it's now Kim. Only they can declare sovereignty. Well, now Marduk is now gone, only Kim can declare sovereignty. Now, he mentioned about the Queen. She is a sovereign. But the Queen, as the guy mentioned in the show, does not own the crown. It's the Rothschilds and their ilk, which is why the Queen has to have special permission to enter that region, known as the Square Mile, the Temple Bar, etc. But the gist of his piece was based on Irish history and the Constitution, and all of Ireland's ills were down to Britain and the Queen, except that's not correct. It goes back to 1215, King John and the Magna Carta. And King John sold all of the British subjects out. And the king, after that, was no longer in power. So the country was not run by the king. And what they then created was a parliament, which part means parlay, which is speak, meant mind. Mind speak. This then rolled into government. Govern, control, meant mind. So you've got mind speak and mind control. Sound familiar? But that particular charter only spoke about the freemen. But the majority of the people were not freemen, they were peasants. And no monarch of England ever had unrestricted or absolute control after that. And so essentially the Magna Carta was another power play. The kings were removed and replaced by the families, the bloodline families, the 301 families listed on the document. It was a power play. They wanted to control all within the families. This is how long it's been going on. That's 804 years ago. because the freemen were all the earls and barons and nobles, in other words, the nobility families. They didn't want to be ruled by kings. Some kings are good and some were not. They wanted to take over, and that's what happened. But the reality is, every person on this planet is a monarch. Not just the royalty. That's what that took away. So the Magna Carta stripped the peasants of all the rights, in essence, as it only applied to the freemen, the families. And then we had, I mentioned about the IRA, which is the, allegedly, what most people think, the Irish Republican Army, and they protect the Southern Irish people. Not correct. And most people who are familiar in Europe, and particularly in Britain and Ireland, were aware of the bombing campaign in the UK and think that's when the IRA started in the 1970s. But you need to think again. Their history, remember, always repeats itself. On November the 23rd, 1867, three Fenians, William Philip Allen, Michael O'Brien and Michael Larkin, known as the Manchester Martyrs, were executed in Salford for their attack on a police van to release Fenians, as they were called back then, which Fenians now is a derogatory term for Catholics, believe it or not. And they were held captive earlier that year. On December the 13th, 1867, the Fenians exploded a bomb in an attempt to free one of their members being held on remand in Clerkenwell Prison in London. The explosion damaged nearby houses, killed 12 and caused 120 injuries. And you thought the bombs were in the 1970s. Try 1860. As it turns out, none of the prisoners escaped. And it wasn't just in Britain and Ireland. Patrick J. Whelan was hanged in Ottawa for the assassination of an Irish-Canadian politician, Thomas D'Arcy McGee, in 1868. Then there was a mention of Sinn Féin, who were like the political group with that stems out of the IRA, or have allegiance with the IRA. And then you've got Gerry Adams and Martin McGuinness, who were both prominent Sinn Féin and leaders of the IRA, except both of them were working for the system, not the Irish people. Adams is Knights of Malta, and McGuinness wears the badge of Hibernian, the secret handshake society, the system. And then there's the Battle of the Boyne in the 1600s. Even to this day, the Protestants are celebrating on July the 12th of William of Orange defeating the Irish people. Still celebrating something that took place 400 years ago. It's beyond stupid. It's more beyond stupid when you realise what you're actually celebrating. William of Orange was not British, but Dutch. He was made King of England for his endeavours, and this shows what these people will do over a prolonged period of time, playing the same games over and over again. And they sometimes even use the same characters despite the gap in time. Take note of that. The sleight of hand is a common theme. The order loves nothing more than watching us all go down blind alleys. They throw in a narrative and a direction they wish people to go, and largely every single time we've followed it. But some can see beyond the illusion and the sleight of hand and are now pulling back the curtain on their fake theatre productions. Like that guy said, like I said, he had a lot of really interesting and good knowledge. But the majority of Irish, Southern Irish, believe that the Brits and the Queen is the source of all their ills. Now, neither of those have covered themselves in any glory, that we do know. But both are the fall guys for this particular narrative. Like I said, the Battle of the Boyne was not done by the Brits, but actually the Dutch royal house groups, family, and in particular the House of Orange. And here we are 400 years later, the Protestants, I said that the right way, well, Protestants, they're actually protesting. The fact that they're still celebrating and marching down Catholic roads and rubbing it in their faces from something that took place 400 years ago is beyond stupid. When A, part of the system of control against us, and B, that person was from Holland, not the UK. Think different is the key. As for the Catholics and your fight, is again beyond stupid. If you don't bother to learn your own history, once you learn that the IRA, Sinn Féin, the Fenians were never fighting for you, but were fighting for the system to eliminate you and your history, like the real name of Ireland is Scotia. Why? Go and check who's buried in Trawley Bay. Queen of Scotia. The real name's not Ireland or Eire, it's Scotia. And Ireland and its whole history has been distorted to fit a certain narrative, and in particular the narrative of the Roman Catholic Church. They're the ones who ordered the Battle of the Boyne. Just carried it out. That's not to say some of the British families were not involved either, but it was all the houses, the families, House of Bavaria, House of Orange, etc., etc. But the Roman Catholic Church you all worship have destroyed every aspect of your life, every day of your life. You've chosen to ignore their crimes, which, funny enough, unlike the Catholics of the 1500s, who were protesting against the very same church that tramples all over you on a daily basis, including your history and people, which later morphed into a religion called Protestantism. You are fighting your own people. Do you not realise that? You've all been played, North or South, Catholic or Protestant. You're all the same people. Now, do you carry on hating your own people and play the program system game, or do you use your brains you were given and realise the problem is not politicians? You give them far too much credit than they deserve. The problem is not North or South. Catholic or Protestant, the problem is you. All of you. The time to correct it is now. Try coming together as people, not as Irish, not as Catholic, not as Protestant, not as supporters of Dutch kings or Pope worshippers, just people. That's all it takes. When the Belfast child sings again, and the Dublin child, and many other places in Ireland, whole history, like America, complete and utter lie. You got one side blaming the wrong people and worshipping a royal family line, and the other in support of a criminal church, and don't realise that the Protestants are really Catholics. Oops. Going forward, we are going to have to think a lot better than we are. We just are. Like the Palestinians and Israel people who are working under extreme duress to try and engineer peace between them. There's lots going on in North and South Ireland also, where communities are coming together, but old habits die hard, and they believe what the system has fed them. But the system has fed them bullshit since the day the written word came out, because they wrote all the books. Thankfully this show and many others are now rewriting them. But it's no use me telling you your real history unless the people of that country are going to stand up and support the people. Not as a Catholic or a Protestant, or I'm Southern Ireland or I'm Northern Ireland, just people. That's all we are at the end of the day, people. Not Americans, not Brits, not Irish, not this, that and the other. People. And when we all realise that, we're all going to have a much better world. A couple of things to ponder on. There's been a common theme around the world about Chinese elders. I'll try not to swear in this part. I think I've sworn enough in this show, more than I normally do. But despite no one being able to name any of them, no one appears to know who exactly these fabled elderly gentlemen are. But the common consensus is they are reverent, wisdom-based and benevolent, and how they all want to save the world. But where were these same fantastic elders when Pol Pot and Chairman Mao, who was Kuomintang, I might add, when those two were committing genocide in their own country and the neighbouring one? Where were these oh-so-nice elders then? Benevolent, my ass. Question to ponder. If the Cold War was all about the rise of communism, why wasn't China a Cold War enemy as well? Given their population is 10 times that of Russia, you would think they would be part of the Cold War, would you not? One of life's great mysteries, it seems. Or the real truth, the Cold War was all bullshittery. I'm probably not going to have time to read that piece. I'll save that piece for next week. It's about EU corruption. But we've got an update on the Yellow Vests Act 11, the 11th week of protest. And the SFP, the Syndicate French Police, estimates the number of participants in the Yellow Vest protest now at 330,000. This includes evening manifestations and yellow vests at roundabouts, blocking the traffic, blocking the system. And they estimated the pro-Macron demonstration at 3,500, boosted by the media to 10,500. Well, they lie. That's what they do. So the pro-Macron is about 1% of the yellow vests protesters currently. And apart from the demonstrations, protesters also are blocking traffic, destroyed speeding cameras and toll gates at the highway. They also organised a bank run, destroyed ATM machines, and there are thousands of manifestations taking place now for the last 11 weeks. Now the pressure on the police increases. On top of the daytime demonstrations, the Yellow Vests also organised the Yellow Night to wear out the police, and the police has to work 16-hour working days or more now when mobilised for all the events, often on top of a 5-day full-time working week. And more of the police officers are calling in sick. They are harassed by the authorities and pressured to go back to work. And last week, the 11th police officer committed suicide since the beginning of this year. You see more and more cops without uniform, so it looks like they are recruiting more mercenaries, which is correct, 100%. Police violence. The demonstrations last Saturday started peacefully. Unfortunately, some demonstrations in the big cities again turned out into a violent clash between the police and the protesters. And the scene, as can be seen in the many video clips shared on Twitter and YouTube, looks more like a war zone and a massacre than a democratic Western nation. On Saturday, January the 26th, one of the figureheads of the Yellow Vest movement, Jerome Rodriguez, was also injured, and he probably has lost his right eye. Now the scene was filmed, and there are reasons to believe it was a deliberate attack on one of the main figureheads of the Yellow Vest movement. A hand grenade, of all things, police don't carry hand grenades, and a flashball gun was fired at him at the same time. Just before the attack, someone screamed, "Lower your gun, do not point it at the head." 3 seconds later, Jerome was hit, and he's likely to lose his eye. Now, internal police investigators have launched an inquiry, as has the Paris prosecutor. More than 80 similar inquiries have been launched following serious injuries or legal complaints during the Yellow Vest protests. Now, the violence has seemed to escalate. The mercenaries, of which the police claim belong to La BAC, seem to get orders to kill. And there are several photos and a video that show these mercenaries and police officers with a hammer as a weapon. So, taking stock after 11 weeks, at least 6,000 people have been arrested. It's not clear how many, as many are still in custody. 13 people have died. 1,100 casualties among police, 2,200 casualties among protesters, 104 severely wounded, amputees, brain injuries, organ failure, permanent handicap. 2 are in coma, and at least 18 people have lost an eye, and at least 4 people have lost a hand, and 11 police officers have committed suicide. Now, last week, President Macron signed the ancient treaty with Angela Merkel, paving the way for a European army. This is how they can funnel more funds to NATO, as the European army is already in place, the Rothschilds private army known as NATO, deep state clowns. And in the past few weeks, a number of European tanks with a European flag instead of a French flag have been spotted on the streets of France. What do the Yellow Vests want? Well, the majority of the movement is realising that a few tokens like temporary tax cuts is not going to solve their problems. They are becoming more and more aware of the repressive system that is operating on behalf of an elite, and not the majority of the people, which is a good sign. Since the Yellow Vests movement, the system is showing its real face. And for those of you who have seen the videos, oh boy, they have. What I'm going to say is, whilst I never condone violence, I've watched some of them fighting back. So kudos to the French people. Us Brits are historically not fond of French people. We have a bit of a rivalry, but kudos to them. So therefore they're ready to embrace a real solution, and one of the ideas that the majority supports is the RIC, referendum initiative by the citizens. Now, RIC would reform the political system and change it from a representative system to a participants system. People will have a direct say in the legislation and no longer have to depend on representatives. In brief, they will be able to initiate a referendum, votes are binding, propose legislation, able to change the constitution, abolish existing laws, and repeal of representatives. These reform measures would give the people the power back. It would also give them the opportunity to exit Europe, known as Frexit. Needless to say, the ruling elite does not want this implemented, and they came up with a ruse to divide the movement and control the opposition by forming a new political party, Gilets Jaunes, Yellow Vest, RIC, not RIC as abbreviation of Referendum Initiative by the Citizens, but Railment d'Initiative Citoyen, which means something like Rally of the Initiative by the Citizens. This is what they do. Just a sleight of hand again. It's a common theme. You've heard it enough in tonight's show. They just switch it around a bit. This political party will run for the up-and-coming European elections this spring, and the party has 10 candidates. Well, they got them very quick, didn't they? That should give people a clue. And one of the candidates is Mark Dwyer, an avid supporter of Macron in December last year. This initiative reeks like a controlled opposition, because it is. And it's a common theme that a second organisation is founded that is a copy of a successful yet threatening grassroots movement. It's a bit like the Irish story and the Protestants morphed into a religion. It's all sleight of hand. And for example of this taking place previously, the ITNJ, which is Robert David Steele, Stone and other goons, as a copy of the ITCCS, which is Kevin Annett and his fairly groundbreaking stuff that he's done right on the ground, spoken to all the people in Canada who have suffered the most horrendous abuse and seen all their friends die. To shut them up. ITNJ is fake. They'll hear the stories and they're going to whitewash it, because Robert David Steele is not ex-CIA, he is CIA. This copy is a mirrored version of the original, often with opposite objectives. This copy organisation seems to have funding in a short space of time, just like ITNJ, has access to resources and gets lots of positive media coverage. In other words, they're doing a spin. That in itself is an achievement for the French people, that they've got to invest that time and money to provide a spin that quickly. I told you we had the power. And the mainstream media propaganda has up until now mostly ignored or downplayed the police violence against the yellow vests, as well as ignored their version of RIC. But now the mainstream media suddenly promotes the new political party, Yellow Vests RIC, and this is highly suspicious. Now, as I said, I've watched some of the videos of violence in France, and I'm going to say it again, kudos for the French people for fighting back against the cops. Now, regular listeners will know I do not condone violence per se, but under such provocation that those people went through, people have the right to defend themselves from such brutal tactics used by those in navy uniforms. Some cops got back and more what they have been dishing out on a regular basis. I warned of all this back in 2014. Cops would be in big trouble once the police rose up. I even invited an ex-cop onto the show who had been on PBS, except he declined. But the world over has watched these glorified thugs intimidate, shoot at, maim and kill people day after day for something as trivial as a traffic offence, never mind a protesting movement. And it was only a matter of time before people said enough is enough. Cops will suffer increasing injuries and deaths at the hands of the public. Why? Because they are the first line of defence to protect the criminal elite. Cops need to tell the criminal elite to go and do their own dirty work and face the public, not risk their lives, risk injuries, risk committing suicide. And it's time for the cops to step down in various places of discord. And if they do, I hope the public support them. I hope the public then don't abuse the situation by looting and going on crime sprees like what happened in Brazil when the cops went on strike there last year. This type of behaviour is why they feel we need a control system. If we all acted responsibly, there's no need for it. And both have a responsibility to come together, the police and the protesters. But for the cops, you lot are in big trouble. Big, big trouble. Hiding behind your shields, your weaponry, arrogance and thuggery to protect a system that doesn't give a flying shit about you or your family. Like everyone else, they'll throw you under the bus. So to the cops in France and globally, ask yourselves, what am I actually protecting here? Why have I been sent to Israeli military training to do a police job? Why am I being asked to spray chemicals in people's eyes? Why am I being asked to maim and kill people who are protesting about life? Why have all police been given mind control radios? All of you. Oops. Why am I protecting something that is damaging my own friends and family? Why am I attacking my own people? It's time, like the generals, for you all to down tools and embrace the protesters. They will welcome you. We all want the same things deep down. So why risk your life for a system that crushes us all? Hashtag cops walk away. Or better still, keep your weaponry and join the protesters. Hashtag cops fight the system. Maybe this is what the bureaucrats fear and why they want an EU army, a collection of paid mercenary thugs. Some of those groups we will name after this. A few new names for you all to take note of and go and do your research with regards to mercenary style so-called security groups. Now the first one you will be familiar with, or most of you will anyway. Academy, spelt with an I on the end, not a Y, as that's the new name of the Eric Prince Blackwater Group. Here's some others that you may not be familiar with. Triple Canopy, Omniplex, Constellis, AMK9, Olive Group, Centera, Edinburgh International, TDI, and Strategic Social Security. Take note of them. They're some of the goons that are really running countries and governments. Maybe I'll leave that. Things are happening on an increasing basis in our lives now. Attacks by family members, partners leaving, discord in your own circles. Unless things make sense in the world, is 1, a test of your resolve, 2, wheat and chaff disconnection evidenced, and 3, the two worlds getting wider. Why are you noticing it, and what is your reactions? Essentially, your frequency level has changed. You are not in their paradigm anymore. And we did warn all of the above would take place as far back as 2015, and warn further in certain aspects in the subsequent years since. Don't fear it. Don't react to it. Just embrace where you are and where you're at. Now the final piece for tonight is about the PSI field. For those new, it's like your aura. But imagine your PSI field is like an item of clothing. You all love that old, worn-out jacket and refuse to replace it. But it's not the jacket you hold on to, it's the frequency of it. It's also comfortable, despite the holes, the tears, and being out of shape. You hold onto it till it literally falls off your back. Or the wife bins it on trash day so you can't recover it. I can hear some men sniggering now. Well, the same applies to our PSI field on an individual and collective level. And the question is, how will you fare walking in a 50-mile-an-hour blizzard of snow with that jacket on? Not too well. And the wearer may change jackets. And yet many choose to ignore their own personal jacket and leave holes in it and wander around life in a blizzard of negative frequencies day after day and wonder why life is crap. Now some will say, well, I can't see it, so it's not real. But no one can see air, but we still breathe it. No one has seen God, Jesus or Muhammad, but 4.5 billion believe in it. Denying its existence is a frequency-based suicide program. I'll repeat that again. Denying its existence is a frequency-based suicide program. Now imagine inside the jacket is a cup filled with oil, all thick and gooey, and you attempt to clean that cup with water. what happens? All the oil stays and the water skims off. So neither the cup or the item of clothing gets cleansed. It just sits there. Except, unlike the cup or the jacket, ours festers, expands, proliferates, and weighs us down. The cup, which is the inner you, is filled with negative frequencies of anger, frustration, anguish, envy, insecurities, inferiority complex, little me, victim, saviour programs, hurt, pain, and traumas. A vicious cocktail of frequencies, none of which is helpful to you in this life, or future lives for that matter. A thick, viscous soup that leaves you, in essence, like walking through life in treacle. Molasses for those who are American. So that is what many people have become, a thick soup. And then we come to the garment you wear, known as your PSI field. Again, that is thick in oil, full of holes and tears. You try to wash it and it rolls off. It's too greasy or slippery, or it falls in the hole. So you have to break it down to clean that field also. A PSI field full of holes is an entrance point for the astral level infections, the dark spirits, and the extinct critters. For those new, cancer comes from an astral level infection, not the physical level. If you get cancer, you had a hole in your PSI field. Your field is filled with inner trauma and also the angers and frustrations of everyone else in your close environment or those you engage with. And yet people think they can thrive in that environment. You think your inner light can shine like a beacon in that environment. Nope. The oil is that thick, not enough of your inner light penetrates. Too many have become a walking stream of negative, lower level frequencies. Your PSI field is connected to other lower level frequencies. Like attracts like. And essentially you become a walking Wi-Fi delivery system of negative frequencies, and you drag them through your lives day after day. At some point, all of you will have had a fallout with someone, be it vocal or by violence, and you no longer speak to that person, and you think that that is that. Nope. You have a tentacle or a cord still connected with that frequency or person because you never let it go. Now imagine all the other tentacles you have with all the other people you have had bad interactions with. You'll resemble looking something like a villain trapped by Spider-Man in a movie, meshed in a negative web that you may perceive as not your doing, but a differing percentage of that interaction was down to you and your reactions to it. And this is the essence of why your shadow and inner work is the most important thing you can do. You repeat behaviours and bad scenarios in your life because you didn't address the previous ones. And I guess it's time to cut some cords, is it not? Every sexual intercourse encounter you have had also creates a cord. So whilst you thought it was fun at the time, you all notched up all these sexual encounters, perhaps now it was not the best interaction for you overall, was it? Now, I can imagine some thinking back now of the ones they've slept with and going, holy F, Thomas, I really didn't want to hear that. Well, I said you will hear what you need to know, not what you want to know. But that sexual cord lasts for 7 years, whether you're with that person or not. 7 years on the last interaction. The global PSI field is also a thick treacle, mired in discord, disconnection, distortions and lies. And your PSI field you wear is based on lies and the masking of lies that you embrace, because it is or was not the real you, was it? We've all worn masks to cover our own perceived weaknesses, and a dropping of the mask leaves the real you. If you don't like the real you, or not enough of the real you is being shown, that's up to you to correct it. As you empty your inner cup, more of the real you comes out, not the negative frequencies we've all held on to. We have accepted the narrative that has been fed to us, and it became part of our field, like earlier, the Irish history, the American history, what's going on in South America, what's really the truth about the Catholic Church, etc., etc. We've all been fed the narrative, and it became part of our field, like the old worn-out jacket. We've held onto it for far too long. But there's a tiny light inside of all of you that is chirping away, going, this field, this life, and your whole reality is BS. The whole field holds all of the lies we've been fed on and in all aspects of life. The field, in essence, is like an AI copy of illusion. It's a mask. We are not the Phantom of the Opera, men or women. We are a shining beacon. So why do we all dull that light with bullshittery and fakery? As your inner light gets bigger, and as you cut more of your cords via the inner work, you reach a tipping point where the light shines more than the oily dark shadows, and it's screaming, get out of this field. This is your knowledge-based awakening, and suddenly things start to make more sense, because the fog is lifted and your inner and outer vision is suddenly a whole lot clearer. Reality just walked in your door and essentially slapped you out of your self-induced coma. No more back in the permanent sleeper pods for you. You can't undo what you have learned and gone back, or go back, because that you no longer exists. Why? Because you're no longer in that field or frequency anymore. And finally in your life you begin to grow. Despite all your cords, disconnections, traumas, strife, pain, and consuming volumes of negative frequencies, consume the lies, and wearing proudly and stubbornly your masks of illusion, and having slept for vast parts of your life, had clever manipulators pulling strings in the background, walking through life in a vast vat of treacle, you all came out the other side. and you're all shining your beacons of light as only an organic human can. Give yourselves all a pat on the back for even getting this far. You're still waiting for the event? You were the event. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Bye for now.